Sometime around late May or early June, something quietly changes across millions of American backyards. The feeders come down. The seed containers sit empty. The daily routine that lasted through winter slowly fades away. Most people assume they are doing the right thing. After all, summer has arrived. The trees are green. The flowers are blooming. The days are long and warm. Food seems to be everywhere. Surely the birds do not need our help anymore. At least that is what most people believe. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the season that looks easiest for birds is actually one of the most demanding times of their entire year? And what if the feeder hanging outside your window matters far more than you realize? Because the hidden reason birds need you most in summer has very little to do with feeding hungry birds. It has everything to do with survival. And by the end of this story, you may never look at your backyard birds the same way again. If you are new here, subscribe and join us as we explore the hidden world, living just beyond the glass, the stories, the science, and the quiet mysteries that most people walk past every single day. Now let us begin. Right now, somewhere in your neighborhood, a pair of birds is working harder than most people can imagine. While you are enjoying your morning coffee, they are already searching for food. While you are checking your phone, they may have already flown dozens of miles. And while most people think of summer as a time of abundance, these birds are living through one of the busiest periods of their entire lives. Because summer is baby season. Hidden inside nests, tucked beneath roof lines, deep inside shrubs, and high among tree branches, thousands of young birds are growing every day. And they are hungry, very hungry. A single nest of baby birds can require hundreds of feeding visits every day. Hour after hour, trip after trip, the parents leave the nest, search for insects, gather food, return to feed their young, then leave again, over and over from sunrise until sunset. To us, it seems impossible. To them, it is simply another day. And this is where the story becomes far more interesting. Because most people think bird feeders exist for birds. In reality, during summer, they often exist for parents. When an adult bird finds a reliable source of food, something remarkable happens. It spends less energy feeding itself, which means it can spend more energy feeding its young. Your feeder may never directly feed a baby bird, but it may help the parent survive another demanding day. And sometimes that difference matters more than we realize. A healthier parent can make more trips. A stronger bird can defend a nest more effectively. A well-fed adult has a better chance of successfully raising its young. The difference may seem small, but nature is built on small differences. One extra feeding trip, one extra meal, one extra day of growth. That is often all it takes. But that is only part of the story, because another challenge is quietly unfolding throughout the summer months, one that most backyard bird lovers never notice, and it may be affecting the birds around your home right now. When people think about difficult seasons for birds, they usually think about winter, snow, ice, frozen ground, long cold nights. Winter certainly creates challenges, but summer has its own hidden struggles, especially during the hottest weeks of the year. Across many parts of America, long stretches of heat begin to dry the landscape. The soil becomes harder, the grass loses moisture, ponds shrink, and insects become more difficult to find. To us, everything still appears green and alive. But for birds, something important has changed. The food sources they depend on become less reliable. A parent bird that once found insects close to the nest may suddenly need to travel much farther. It must work harder, fly longer, spend more energy, all while continuing to feed hungry chicks waiting back at the nest. This creates a hidden gap, a period when food becomes harder to find at exactly the moment when demand remains incredibly high. And that is where your feeder becomes far more important than most people realize, not because birds cannot survive without it. Many would survive, but survival is not the same thing as thriving. A reliable source of food creates something precious, a margin of safety, a little extra energy, a little extra time, and in nature, small advantages often create enormous differences. Scientists sometimes describe supplemental feeding as support rather than replacement. You are not replacing nature. You are helping birds navigate an increasingly difficult world, and that world has changed dramatically over the last several decades. There was a time when birds had access to vast areas of natural habitat, wild meadows, native plants, untouched woodlands. large insect populations. But much of that landscape has disappeared. Neighborhoods expanded, roads multiplied, natural spaces became smaller and more fragmented. At the same time, insect populations declined across many regions. For birds, this means more effort for less reward. Yet despite these challenges, they continue showing up in our yards. The cardinals, the finches, the chickadees, the wrens, the blue jays, every morning they arrive. Every day they search. Every season they continue one of the most extraordinary missions in nature, creating the next generation. And that brings us to something even bigger, something that stretches far beyond a single backyard. Because the birds visiting your feeder are part of a story unfolding across an entire continent. And once you understand that story, you may never see your backyard in quite the same way again. For a moment, I want you to imagine your backyard from a bird's perspective. Not as a place where you relax after work, not as a place where you mow the lawn, not as a place where your family gathers on warm evenings. Imagine it as a small island, a place of safety in an increasingly unpredictable world, a place where food can still be found, a place where water may still be available during a hot summer afternoon, a place where a tired bird can stop and recover before continuing its journey. Because for many birds, that is exactly what your yard has become, and that matters more than ever before. Over the last several decades, scientists have documented something deeply concerning. Bird populations across North America have been declining. Not just a few species, not just rare birds hidden deep in remote forests. Many of the birds people grew up seeing every day have become less common. The songs that once filled summer mornings have grown quieter. The flashes of color that once brightened gardens and parks appear less frequently. Most people never notice these changes because they happen slowly. A little less this year, a little less the next. And then one day something feels different. The mornings seem quieter, the trees seem emptier, and people cannot quite explain why. The truth is that wild birds face challenges from every direction. Habitat loss, extreme weather, declining insect populations, window collisions, predators, disease, and countless pressures we rarely see. No single backyard can solve all of these problems, but thousands of backyards can help. Millions of backyards can help even more. And that is why the simple act of keeping a feeder filled during summer matters. Not because it saves every bird, but because it helps some of them. And when enough people help some birds, the effect becomes something much larger. A network of safe places, a chain of support stretching across towns, cities, suburbs, and rural communities. Thousands of small acts creating one larger outcome. This is also why birds continue returning to the same places year after year. Birds remember. They remember where food was available. They remember where water could be found. They remember where they felt safe. And once a bird discovers a reliable location, it often returns again and again. The same tree, the same garden, the same feeder, the same yard. To a bird, consistency matters. Reliability matters. Safety matters. Which brings us back to the question we started with. Why do birds need you most in summer? The answer is not because they are helpless. It is not because they cannot survive without human assistance. And it is certainly not because nature has stopped working. The real answer is much simpler. Summer is the season when birds are investing everything they have into the future. Every nest, every egg, every chick, every feeding trip, every ounce of energy, everything is focused on creating the next generation. And during that critical time, even a small amount of support can make a meaningful difference. A handful of seeds, fresh water, a shaded feeder, a safe yard. Simple things, yet nature has always depended on simple things. A single seed becomes a flower. A flower attracts an insect feeds a chick becomes an adult bird. And one day, that bird builds a nest of its own. Life moves forward through countless small moments, most of them invisible, most of them unnoticed. Which means the most important thing happening in your backyard may be something you never see. You might watch a bird land at your feeder for only a few seconds. It grabs a seed, looks around, then flies away. The moment seems ordinary, almost forgettable. But what happens next may be far more important than we realize. Perhaps that bird returns to a nest hidden deep inside a tree. Perhaps several hungry chicks are waiting there. Perhaps the energy gained from your feeder allows that parent to make one more feeding trip before sunset. One more trip, one more meal, one more day of growth. Small things. Yet nature has always been built upon small things, and perhaps that is what makes backyard birds so remarkable. They remind us that even the smallest actions can ripple outward in ways we never fully understand. Most birds will never know your name. They will never understand who you are. They cannot thank you. They cannot explain the role your yard may have played in their survival, but they keep returning, year after year, season after season, and perhaps that is their way of telling the story. A cardinal appearing on the same branch each morning, a chickadee visiting the same feeder, a goldfinch glowing yellow in the afternoon sunlight. Small reminders that the natural world is still connected to our lives, and perhaps paying more attention than we realize. The next time you look outside on a warm summer morning, I hope you see something different. Not just birds, not just a feeder, but a connection, a small bridge between your life and theirs, a connection built through simple daily choices, a connection that may help carry another generation safely into the future. Because summer is not the season when birds stop needing help. In many ways, it may be the season when they need it most. And that is the hidden reason your feeder still matters. Not because birds cannot survive without it, but because sometimes a little help creates possibilities that nature alone cannot guarantee. The birds visiting your yard this summer may never remember your face, but the future they help create may carry the results of your kindness farther than you will ever know. Now I would love to hear from you. Do you continue feeding birds throughout the summer? Or did you once believe they no longer needed your help once the weather turned warm? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single comment, and some of the most remarkable stories in this community come from people who simply started paying closer attention to the birds around them. And if you would like to discover another hidden secret about the birds visiting your backyard, the next story is already waiting.